Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to today's show. I am your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and we are going to talk about what happens when we figure out how to blend the spirit of adventure with service to others. Our guest is Britt Yett. She is a wife, a mother, and a friend whose professional career reaches wide. Currently, she's an entrepreneur and owner of Wrap Ribbon, a supplier of ribbon and packaging products. She's also the missions program director at Myers Park United Methodist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and an original founding board member of the Go Gen Go Foundation. Britt is a Christian and a youth volunteer, which she notes is her favorite. And today she's going to talk with us about how mission trips have allowed her to experience a merger in her life that has brought together both her personal and professional paths. Britt, welcome to the campfire, my friend.
Hi, you make me sound so much more exciting than I am.
Oh, that's just the perfect intro in here because humble and humility like that just describes who you are to a T. You do so much for others. Britt, can we just start with just a quick little overview of who you are and tell us about your life here in Charlotte, North Carolina?
Well, I'm actually I'm a Charlottean, which makes me a unicorn of sorts. I was born kind of over towards Gastonia. I was born in Charlotte, but lived over in Gastonia, Belmont growing up. Moved into town my freshman year of high school, and then took a big break in the middle to go to college and grad school and worked in other places, but it kind of always been a North Carolinian. Returned to Charlotte in the early 2000s and have been here ever since. Found a husband here, had some kids here, and started like bumbling through this random like choices, it seems like, of career that has brought me to this place, which is sort of business owner and missions coordinator.
So here's a fun thing. Like, I asked you this morning to just give me I've known you for a long time, and sometimes when you know somebody for a long time, it almost makes the introduction even harder, right? So I asked you for, some ideas for your introduction, and you shared with me a story that you had told to a youth in one of your organizations about how the path that you take in life, it seems random, but when you look back at it, it sort of makes more sense. So I'm kind of curious if you could just kind of like elaborate on sort of what you told me in a text message this morning, because I think it's really relevant about that seemingly randomness of your path.
Right. Well, this was a lovely young woman that I've known for a long time. I started volunteering with my church in the youth group. I have a wonderful friend, Jason Reimer, who is the director of youth there, and sort of like, a lot of my crazy adventures start with him. He's someone you should probably have on a podcast at some point. But he kind of pulled me in and asked me to help out, and I fell into it and just found a passion for these kids, for these high school kids. And at this point, I had small children. So this young lady is now graduated college and is looking for a job, and she was like, I don't know if it's the right job. And I started thinking about my own jobs. I was like, I think you just start, and you find your way. I think that at 20 something, I had no idea who I was. I don't think I ever realized how many jobs were out there. So I started, I've worked everything from commercial real estate to like long distance telephone when like voice over internet was a new thing.
Yeah.
Well, I've sort of taken these choices. Most of them had to do with people. And that'll be a theme that if I look back over my life, it was always about choices I made about people I knew and where they drew me or recommended I go. So it's always, my path is always strewn. I can identify each job and tell you about the person that meant something to me in that space. So I think in talking to her about her job choices, I kind of went through this random, job resume. But then I realized, along the way, my personal resume of getting married, starting a family, really in a sense becoming a Christian, because I didn't really grow up that way. And defining what that meant for myself, because I have a problem sometimes with church, not with God, but with church. It's a man-made thing. So just sort of all of this path that I was going in my personal life, and then I'm working in random long distance telephone. So at some point these things started to influence each other, and I
Yeah.
think that came with maturity and knowing myself a little bit better, through a lot of the wrong jobs. They weren't bad jobs, but they weren't my forever job. There was no one job. But every step along the way is a choice you make that just either gives you more information about what you love in life, or more information about what you don't love in life, which is all information, and you become more of yourself.
In your message this morning, you mentioned something about not really being able to see it until it's over and you can look back at it.
Right. Right. I think, looking back, and we're always trying to make these decisions, and I just don't think you don't realize in their entirety of how they fit into your life until you look back on it. And now this weird path of being, I mean, if you had asked me at 20 something if I was going to work for a church, I would have, I mean, just laughed outright in your face.
Yeah.
So, but now I see that there's some elements of this, like working in commercial real estate, that, pushed me away from certain things and towards other things.
Yeah.
So looking back, I see kind of how the path makes a little bit more sense.
Well,
Um,
real estate is land and structures, and here
mhm,
you are going off to Mexico to build structures on land for people in
yep,
need, right? So this is what's so cool, and this is something that I've always admired about you, is that you've always got something on the horizon and some trip that you're doing, and it's always seems to be connected with some level of service, and that's really what's just been super intriguing to me. But even just most recently, I think it was just maybe a month ago, you went to Mexico.
mhm.
So I wonder, maybe we could just start there, and you can just, for listeners, just kind of give us an overview of what a mission trip to Mexico looks like.
For this particular, this is a trip I started doing with youth. So it was, by definition, when you're working with young people, it's usually needs to be active, and it needs to be engaging in some
Mhm.
ways. So we have this brilliant mixture of, so it's this Faith Ministries. That's an organization in Reynosa, Mexico, and they build houses for residents in their community that, it's a lot like a habitat sort of format. So they put in a lot of sweat equity, but they're families that just can't afford to do that on their own. And they employ local workers for, as foremen and as construction, then depending on who the groups, so groups come and visit a week at a time and build houses. So depending on how many volunteers they have versus worker, you work together with
Mhm.
local and with the family that you're building for, and you create a home for them. And at that point, when you meet the family, and work alongside people in the local community, it becomes a home, not a house, right? It just becomes, you understand who they are, why they need this home. You see their current living conditions, and it's humbling. It's one of those, I thought a lot about adventure when you were talking about the podcast, and a lot of that is adventure is really a form of just expanding your world. I think, it's curiosity, it's seeking something bigger, and we always go down to Mexico, and it's hot and it's hard work. I mean, we're talking about mixing concrete, we're pouring roofs, it's sweat, and you're covered and you're
Mhm.
dirty, and you're so fulfilled. At the end of the day, you've done something and connected with people. And then we kind of all take a shower and sit, and we eat together. We always eat together with the families. And then we sit on this patio at the end of the day with these breezes coming through, and we talk about the day. And
Yeah.
we talk about how, we talk about a world that's bigger than ourselves. Everyone, no one sits on that patio at night thinking about their lives at home. As well, they do, but from a perspective of a bigger world.
Yes. There is so much in there. I love how you boiled adventure down to expanding your world, and you use the word curiosity, which is, that's one of my favorites. It's kind of what drives me in this podcast, is that curiosity behind why people do what they do, which is so cool. But like, fulfillment was something that I wanted to talk about, and you kind of went there already. Like, you talked about the dirt and the sweat and the hard work. Um, But then you followed that up with, and then we felt so fulfilled. So I just wonder if we could just go like one level deeper, like where does the fulfillment come from?
Yeah, I when I describe especially this trip, and I've done different mission trips in different places, but this one in particular, which is that really typical, like you work hard. I can't on paper, worst trip in the world. I mean, you are living in for a while. They now have air conditioning at night in our
Mhm.
rooms, but we didn't have air conditioning. It'd be 90 degrees in your room. We had 2 showers for 25 women. We work hard. There's concrete stuck to your skin. You have to worry about concrete burns. We heft, you try to, buckets full of sand and more over your shoulder. And I mean, it's physically, just a really tough trip. And on paper, if you're trying to describe it to someone, people are like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
But what I'll tell you is that you do that. And in the end, everybody is just asking for the dates when they get to get back. And I think
Yeah.
part of it is being in service to someone else. It's not service is never a one-way street. We're not there to help these families. We're there to offer our labor and then to get something in return. It's we are always given more than we receive.
Mm.
And explaining it is little, and this is, I mean, now I'm sort of cheating a little bit, but there's a little bit in the church, we're going to call it the Holy Spirit. I mean, it's really a little bit of that. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you come out and your heart, your heart has grown 3 times the size it was when it came in. Because you've left a piece of yourself. It's all about connection and relationships for
Yeah.
me. And that's an easy place to do it.
Yeah. So there's the connection, there's the relationship. You've helped this community, but what I also heard was like there's a huge sense of accomplishment because I mean, essentially of the suffering, right? Like the hard work, it's painful, it's suffering. Like and
Yeah.
you do it because of this sense of accomplishment that you're gonna have afterwards.
And I think there's a realization that, I mean, like anything, is that at the end of the day, we also go back to it's not a posh place, but
Mhm.
we go back to a place that's safe, where we have running water, we have good food. I mean, there's a humility in that, is that we go and we work, but it's temporary for us, and that we are witnessing people's lives. We are offering that we all came from, which is a safe home environment,
Mhm.
well resourced. We have everything we need, and we are giving them the opportunity to share in that abundance, right? I mean, just to give them a chance to have 4 walls around them and a safe place to lay their heads at night,
Yeah.
which, dang,
Sharing
yeah.
in the abundance. That's awesome. I love that. So there's a sense of gratitude that comes out of this is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing. Hey everyone, it's Scott here. This podcast is a passion project for me because I absolutely love adventure. And it's thanks to the effort of my residential real estate team here in Charlotte, North Carolina, that many of you know as the W Realty Group, that this podcast gets funded. This awesome group of people have unmatched levels of competence and caring for our clients. If you know of anyone looking to buy or sell a home, our team serves the Charlotte, North Carolina market, but we can also help you find an agent anywhere throughout the US or Canada through our highly connected network. When you support our real estate business, you are also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your referrals. Yeah. So now the interesting thing about this is it's not you going down there and I mean, it is serving these people, building these houses, doing the work, but you're also taking a group of people. So like from my perspective, looking at you, you're not only going and helping this community, but you're helping the kids that you're taking with you.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm kind of curious if you could kind of elaborate on like, what do you get to witness in terms of the experience that the kids that you take with you go through?
That is the crux of all of it, really. I mean, it almost makes me want to tear up thinking about it. Goodness.
It's
I
awesome. Let it
oh,
flow.
Scott. Um, these kids are, I don't know, I think they come open to the whole experience,
Yeah.
or they don't, or they come in, balls of nerves. Some of them we have, they're just scared to death of it, but they do it anyway, right? So there's already a win. We're taking just a very a privileged group of people down to witness something, and maybe they're all out of their comfort zone. Gosh, they always rise to the occasion.
Mm.
they work hard. I mean, physically, we're talking like cuts and sweat and but also just humor and openness and just this outpouring of love. They a lot of times meet other teenagers in the community, and I have these, they come home, and there was an arm wrestling tournament one night. I mean, it's just there's like, and we do these fiestas once a week, and they bond, and half the time they don't speak Spanish, and but there's this communication and willingness to connect.
Mm.
Um, and we have kids that you think, oh, it's, one of those kids or something. I mean, we all have our ideas of who someone is.
Yeah.
But you see a transformation. You see kids who come in, all tough and like nothing, I'm too cool for this. They maintain this sort of stoic shell,
Yeah.
and then just become open and vulnerable because it may just be you're exhausted, and so that you just can't hold on to that. But I think it's just these kinds of trips, you can't do it by yourself. None of this can be done by yourself. You have to ask for help. You have to rely on your neighbor. You have to. It just goes better when you're vulnerable and open and connecting with people. And it's really, the kids are transformed. I mean, it's the highlight of their high school careers. I mean, they love this experience, and it's through teenagers. That's how we tell them. I was like, how you feel right now, and sitting on this porch and feeling so close to these people. That's where the Holy Spirit sort of works. Like, it's hard to explain, um, but as we're going from a church, it makes our jobs a lot easier.
Yeah, totally. And it's just like this concept of transformation, which I'm just really like, and I just imagine like this group of kids that gets on the plane, and then there is this transformation that happens while you're there, and like what it's like for you to witness like who these kids are when they come back.
Right.
And even like, maybe on the plane ride home, but even like weeks later, like what kinds of changes, like, real changes that you've seen in some of these kids.
Well, and it's just the connections that they've, like, made to each other and to us. They're so much more real, I would say that, and they always talk about their high school friends, and then there's this, but they almost can't bring it back to their regular friends either. It's hard to explain. They're like, it's transformational. It makes it, yeah. Thinking about adventure, you think about like, a day you're like trapped inside with your kids and
Mhm.
it's raining all day. And
Yep.
all of a sudden you say, all right, kids, we're gonna go outside and jump in puddles. That's an adventure, right?
Yeah.
Adventure is about opening your eyes and doing something new and expanding your world. And I really think as we get older and we get into that 4 mile radius of our home, and our calendars get packed with things, we just don't see anything new. And this just forces their world to expand. It forces them to see and think about the world in a different way, and to see
Mhm.
the other who is Mexican or is poverty and all these things that they don't understand. It's really just humans. In the end of the day, they're just connecting to the humanity of the people, and their world and the way that they look at things is never the same again,
Yeah.
because they know that there's something more behind the story.
Yeah. I don't like what I'm feeling right now as you're talking is just this sort of opening of their hearts.
Yeah.
Is that a fair
Yes.
way to sort of?
And I've seen it happen with youth, but then, I've gone to Africa with, grown people, all of us adults, and that same transformation can happen.
Yeah,
You know?
I wanted to, because I wanted to kind of cover some of the other trips that you've taken, because Mexico is only one of the I'm going to say far off locations that you've been to, but I think you've been to Africa a couple of times. Can you tell us about the Africa trips that you've taken?
Yeah, Africa is, we take it with and this will be a plug for Zoe Empowers. It's a phenomenal organization that does work with orphans in Africa. So I've done that, and then we've done another trip with a different church where they focus on an area, and they do everything from doing water boreholes to economic development. So it's going to a different part of the world and meeting humans who feel the same things, who need the same things, who respond to the same thing. Everybody wants connection,
Yeah.
but it's so easy to transform a community with a water hole, a borehole, it's, and so I think that we just take all of that comfort for granted, but it also makes us realize how much comfort's in our lives, and how we're capable of more than we know. I mean, I think it's always just that mind blowing.
And so the Africa trips, I think you said you've taken adults on that trip. That was not, was that not a youth trip, or was it a
It's
mixture?
adults. It's adults,
Adults.
and I'm going again September.
Awesome. Of course
Mm.
you are. I love it. All right. So can you just draw some comparisons for us between, like, again, like you're experiencing, witnessing the adults as compared to the kids that you took to Mexico? Because I heard you say that there was a similarity. I'd love to hear similarities and differences.
I think a lot of it is just, sometimes the teenagers didn't know, right? I mean, they've grown up fairly sheltered, and so this is their first exposure. I think sometimes adults don't wanna know,
Mm,
so it's always in the trick is in who says yes to the trip, really. Like, who says yes to, I want, I mean, Mexico is hot and uncomfortable. Africa is we're gonna take like a 14-hour plane ride. I mean, these are not easy places to get to.
right.
So again, it goes back to what we said again, it's just that curiosity. With kids, they do it because their friends are there. I don't think they know really what they're getting themselves into. They just come out. And I think that's why the kids, their like minds are blown. They just
Mhm.
can't believe this experience they've had.
Yeah.
Adults go into it and make that choice for themselves, maybe because they know what they're missing, or they just have that curiosity to know more. And all these trips really, we do these trips to Africa, and in the end, you have a 3-day safari, right? And no one talks about the safari when we get home. Though it's fabulous. It's fabulous to see the animals, but no one's talking about that when they get home. They're talking about these, 18-year-old orphans who have been empowered to pull themselves out of what is just shocking poverty,
Yes.
and have been empowered to make decisions for their lives and find education and find community. It's all about community. And then they build these communities and they microloan to each other. And these all of a sudden these 18-year-olds are not the poor kids in the community. They're the leaders in their community, and
Mm,
they're leading. They're business owners. They become business owners
yeah.
and acquiring wealth, right?
Yeah.
And so that is something that the adults see from a transformation standpoint, especially with these Zoe trips, watching how, um, and going there as a parent, as an American parent, it's humbling too, because what you see is a 16-year-old is capable of a lot of things, when given the tools and
Right.
being equipped. So
Yeah.
our job maybe isn't to fix, it's just to equip them with the tools and let them do something. So I think that's always an amazing lesson. But I think it boils down to who says yes to the trip a lot of times, and what they're, they might not know. Most people don't. They go in with an idea of what they think they're going to expect on the trip and come home with something completely different.
Well, is it fair, like adults, we have these life experiences, and so we do sort of have expectations. And to me, like, it would seem that there's more of a, like, I know what to expect sort of attitude, even if I don't. And I'm just curious, like, whereas the kids just have no clue, right? They're just going along. And so I'm just
Mhm.
curious, like, do you experience and have you witnessed sort of that same transformation in the adults, or how does the transformation differ?
I think it's a transformation. I think you're right about, but I mean, I think it's usually a surprise about, now, I mean, once you've been on a few of these,
Yeah.
I mean, there is God, they even talk about the mission trip blues when you come home, and all of a sudden you're taken away from that. I think what happens on these trips is that it is so, I mean, it's fulfilling, but it's just so rich. I'll
Hmm.
say it's just every day, every interaction is just so packed with significance.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you realize you come home and you're like, wow, I spent 6 hours today that I can't really account for,
Yeah.
but you go there and you just feel all the whole time. But
Yeah.
you think about your trip to Kilimanjaro.
Yes.
The first post I think I saw from you, I mean, I could be wrong, but was about the people that helped you get there.
Yes.
It wasn't about the view from the top necessarily. It wasn't, and physically, I know it was a challenge in getting ready for it, but you were amazed at the people who helped you get there. You know,
Absolutely amazed. The porters and the people that helped us get up that mountain. Yeah.
Right. And so it becomes less about the mountain and not to be cliched, but the journey, but it's about the connections. And I think
Yeah.
that's why these trips have sort of supplanted, and I still love, I mean, I love to go somewhere and go see all these beautiful, there's so many things on my bucket list I want to do. But if you do it independent of the people or independent of if you just go and take a quick peek and back out, you haven't left any of yourself there either.
Yeah.
So I think it's about making, leaving a part of yourself and taking some of it with you.
So there's an impact. So it's funny when you mentioned Kilimanjaro and you said you went on this 2-week trip that had a safari at the end. Nobody even talks about the safari, and I was just like reflecting on my trip because yes, climbing Kilimanjaro was an epic experience. I didn't go there with a service mindset like you're going on these trips, but there was when after our climb, we went on a safari as well. And one of the things that we did was we stopped at a Maasai village,
Mhm.
and it was only like an hour long experience. And 10 minutes of that experience, they actually took us into the schoolhouse, and class was going on, and my heart just completely melted.
Yep.
I had a whole bunch of extra Cliff Bars from my climb, and I ran back to the car as fast as I could because I wanted to give these kids I just wanted to give them they were
Something.
so
Right.
cute. They were so awesome, and my heart just melted. And like you're so right, it's just like those kind of experiences. But for me, I want to ask you a question because for me, there was almost, I don't know if it's envy, but there was almost an envy about the way that they live because of the simplicity in how they live.
Yep.
And there's
Yep.
almost some degree of like, we get so caught up in the way that we live here in the United States, and to see that people live like that. And they're smart. Those kids in that schoolhouse, they were not, they were having a blast. They were all smiles. They were having a great time. They were happy.
Yep. Yep. Well, and we get that. I can't say that everyone we run across is happy, but the lives, even that we as missionaries or people coming into the place, like and when we were in Mexico, it's very basic living. And it's like you hate the cliche of it, but you realize so much of the things you pursue, it's just not what makes it good and makes you happy. It's just not the stuff. It always comes down to personal fulfillment, feeling like you make a difference to the world and to other people around you. The relationships you're creating. If we're all running out of a burning house, we're not taking our stuff. We're glad to be alive. We're concerned about our families and friends. I mean, all that cliche stuff, but it's really true. And somehow in our life, we can't experience that until we're away from it, and
Yeah.
it's proven to us that that's not what you need for happiness
Yeah.
or fulfillment.
So I want to pivot a little bit and talk about I want to talk about you and that voice inside of you that calls you to adventure. And there's a couple of things here because I'm just gonna kind of a twofold question. But the first is you clearly have a heart that desires to serve. I know this about you, and it's amazing. And you do so much to serve your local community, but you also have this what I see as an adventure mindset that looks to couple that service with adventure. And because you could do a mission trip here, like
Mhm,
you could do Habitat for Humanity right here in Charlotte, but you choose
mhm.
to go to Africa, you choose to go to Mexico. And I just was wondering if you could talk about like that call to like those more remote locations as compared to doing the service piece without the travel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because what you're talking about is travel.
Yes.
There is I love travel. I grew up traveling. My dad is from Germany, so I had family, and we would travel to Germany a lot of every other Christmas or so to visit family. And I love nothing more than getting on an airplane. I just think it's the greatest thing ever. But service, I think it's marrying the two was a very compelling. I think when I first did a
Yeah.
mystery, I was like, "Holy crap, you can do them both." So if as long as the caveat is serving is a two-way street. there's always these transactional service opportunities, right? And we all do them because they're important. Where we donate our clothes, or we do our things, but we don't understand what's on the other side of it. So there's, I think, an important component of service is, how are you getting served? Like, this isn't a one-way street. There's something you're learning. So, like you've done at Crisis, going to dropping your clothes off and then sorting the clothes and understanding what their store is and who's using the store and understanding the entire process and understanding who's receiving and why that store is important, so that you kind of come full circle. I think it's important to understand that, the service is it's a continuum.
Yes.
And you always find yourself on the receiving end if you're doing it right. That sounded judgy. I didn't mean it to be judgy, but I do think that we have really really, really try to focus on relationships and walking alongside people and understanding that the people you're serving with people, you're serving alongside someone, you're walking with them, right? So that you understand their path, and walk their path, not your path. You're not trying to drag people onto your path, saying, "Hey, it's better over here. Do it my way." So it's that idea of walking and meeting people where they are. And I think by going to Africa and going through the villages, or going in Mexico and not staying, we could stay across the border, not as easily now, but you could stay across the border in a embassy suites and
Mhm.
drive across the border every day and do all that work and go home to the air conditioned embassy suites and showers. But we don't do that. We kind of live with the folks. We eat dinner, we break
Right.
bread, tortillas, and that count. So it's the idea of going somewhere and being there, not just sort of dropping in and
Yeah.
pulling back out, right? And so when I say I've been to Africa, I have Facebook friends from Malawi,
Yeah.
that I sort of keep in touch with. It's just understanding that you meet someone there. Otherwise, you just sort of drop in with a tour group and you stay with your own tour group and you don't see anything other than this hotel they've chosen from. Like, a lot of travel experiences are designed to make you feel very comfortable. And when you're very comfortable, nothing changes inside you. It's only when you sort of push your edges a little bit, whether it's fear of climbing a mountain
Mhm.
or it's fear of meeting someone you've never known anyone like that before. You don't speak the same language. When you go there and then you meet someone and you find out that the language is universal, that you can easily communicate if that you're in the right space, it just changes the way everything happens. Uncomfortable is critical to growth,
Yeah.
and you do that.
Uncomfortable
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable is critical to growth. Yeah, and then I also heard, like, you talk about, like, the transactional service versus more of that immersive service, and when you do that immersive service, you're getting that connection that you're seeking,
Right, right.
right?
It has, because you've done service opportunities where you do it and you feel a little uncomfortable. You don't know exactly where you're going, and you do it and you sort of stay on the fringes, and then you sort of leave,
Yeah.
and it's really just been sort of a drain on your time. Like, you don't feel like, I've found when I'm doing something that is the right for me, it adds to my life. It doesn't suck away from me. At the risk of, I know the PTA is the most important thing in the world, but like, my time serving the PTA sometimes would just suck the life out of me
Yeah.
rather than fulfill me, right? So, finding those opportunities. This past year I worked with Room in the Inn, which is and talking about adventure, there is adventure to be found right in our streets. Like I said, we have this 4-mile radius around our lives, right? Because of, we just, the grocery store and kids' schools or whatever. There's a lot in that 4 miles that you've never seen before, and people you don't know, and they're not like you. But what happens, these 4 miles gives us a real comfort zone. And so we work with Room in the Inn, which is Roof Above, fabulous organization here in town. During the winter months, some of the unhoused neighbors they enter this program, and they check in the evenings and are dispersed around Charlotte to churches, and other community organizations who provide them a safe place to sleep, meals, showers. So it's a overnight. And if you go serve in that and really just sit down and you'll have 12 to 20 people who come in. And if you sit down and learn their stories, it's an adventure and their lives are adventures. And, I served through that whole winter and I dealt with, just really tough situations. But that last day when they like pulled out as our last night of service, I wept because you thought, I'm not there anymore and I'm not going to see the relate. It's an adventure. There's adventures everywhere. Travel is a great way to expand adventure, but hey, if you need a break from your reality and, the plane situation right now, you can't get a flight or everything's canceled, stick around home. There's plenty of adventures to be had, you know. I don't know. It's just a hard thing. I think adventure and travel, we think about it in such a one dimensional, like I have to go somewhere far
Right.
away. But I think it's just challenging yourself, doing something that you've never done before.
Doing something you never done before. And what I'm hearing with the service piece is that like the connection is what sort of brings it full circle for you and makes it complete.
Yeah.
Like that.
Just, it's just understanding that your idea, we get so complacent and so comfortable othering people and putting people into groups. But some of the most charming humans walked through the Room in the Inn program with stories that were heartbreaking and triumphant and so very real. It's just we get so comfortable making it simplifying
Yeah.
things, and nothing is simple. And I think we have to keep reminding ourselves of that.
So a lot of this is awareness. It's like, oh, okay, so we're opening up our minds, we're expanding, we're taking these adventures through our curiosity, whether they're local or how has all, because you've really gone deep with this. How has that expansion changed you and how you live your life? Like what's different about you today than before you started this journey of adventure through service?
It's kind of a blessing and a curse. I can't do things as simply as I once did. I don't get the same sort of satisfaction out of everything. But at the same time, I know that you can. I just I'm seeking connection and I just at the end of the day, whatever situation I'm in, I try to take a step into it.
Mm,
It's just taught me that the whole layers of an onion. Our lives can be as little or as much as we make of it, and it's really up to us. That
yeah.
we always have a choice of how to approach a situation and a person, and I dismiss people and judge people. I do all the things I'm not supposed to do too. It's also made me less fearful of humanity. It has, which, affects my politics and everything else. I'm not, I don't think there's anyone out to get us. I don't think that making our world smaller and securing and putting borders around our lives is making anyone safer.
Hmm.
I think it just makes us smaller,
Hmm.
and I think even as a parent, I'm always trying to be cognizant of, we live in the space we're in, so you gotta have that footprint has to be bigger. You have to the only way we learn is to step outside of that comfort zone. Yeah.
And I love how you said that when you find yourself in these situations, like what you've learned is to step into it.
Yeah.
And I love because that just like that demonstrates courage. And you said like it makes you less fearful, which is, fear. We're not trying to get rid of fear, but like courage is stepping into something in the face of fear, right? And that's exactly what you're doing. It's what you're doing for the kids that you take with you and the adults that you take to Africa.
The good thing is that line always moves. Like,
Yeah.
what you're scared of or what makes you uncomfortable, it keeps moving. Like, as soon as you step into it, that line extends out. So all of a sudden you look back and you're like, "Oh, that's no problem," and it would have just struck you, fear before. So,
So you're pushing your boundaries essentially is what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious because you talked about like getting complacent or whatever. Like, are you able to take adventures without the service piece? What's that look like for you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because there's an element of my service adventures that is work. Because, when I'm there and then with 40 teenagers, somebody's getting cut and you got to take there's a work element and you're taking care of people. And it's nice to go on an adventure while I'm not in charge of anything. And sometimes just beauty for the sake of beauty. You have to, I'm not saying that this pursuit of stepping into the unknown, you can't do that every day. I mean, it's
Yeah.
exhausting.
Yeah.
It does take, it takes a toll. It's so you have to rest and recoup a little bit. You have to take time to sort of take the lessons in, right? You have to sort of rest and internalize and reflect. So yeah, I always have a bucket list of adventure. I mean, I have teenage kids, so and which means now there's 4 of us that have to go on the adventure. So you all of a sudden it costs more money and all of those kinds of things. But my kids love to travel, so travel's a big deal. We're already starting to look towards next summer. But yeah, I think all this to say, traveling with a service mindset, it's amazing, it's fulfilling, but also going to somewhere beautiful. And I'm not a beach person, but going on the top of, I want to go to the Canadian Rockies
Yeah.
soon. I'd like to hike. I want to do the hike the pilgrimage, Camino. I want to do. Yeah, I have 1,000 adventures I want to do, but I don't think they'll ever be completely devoid of um, content
Yeah.
in some way.
I mean, the service piece just seems to drive you. It really does. And I'm curious, you've taken this like adventure life and this service life and you've blended them together. You said earlier in the podcast when you realized you could do that, it was like, holy crap, I can do that.
Mhm.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. So I'm curious, like for people that have heard this podcast today and they're like, they have that sort of similar service mindset, but they also feel that call to adventure. Like, what's your advice for those people in sort of getting started? I don't know. For most people, it's like, I'm not going to just jump on a plane to Africa and just show up. Like, how does
Right.
somebody get started in this sort of way of life?
I will say I got started because someone invited me, which was the big thing.
Mhm.
And I admit I went with a church, which helps with the service piece. It's
Yep.
sort of blended, so it's a natural fit. I know there are a lot of unchurched people who will listen to this, and so I don't want you to think like we would take um I will say Myers Park United Methodist Church would invite anyone to go on any of it. You
Mhm.
do not have to have knowledge of, you don't have to recite your favorite verse from the Bible. You don't even have to be a believer. It's just because we always talk about at church, we have this like people who study the Bible and come into faith that way. I came into faith through works, right? Which is that was my natural inclination, is to
Yep.
to do for others, to love people. I love people. I love that kind of thing. So that brought me closer to the church. Um, so I would say, but there's tons of organizations like Habitat does international
Okay.
trips. Habitat International travels
Yeah.
to other places. Um, Zoe empowers. This is a fact. If you want to go to Africa, they set it up. You don't do anything on that trip. That is not a doing trip. It is a witnessing. It is encouraging. It is empowering and loving on folks who are working hard and seeing them. Right. That's all that trip is. But it'll change your life. And then you get to see some cool animals on the end. Like first time I went to Africa, I
Yep.
was kind of like, sweet, there's a safari. But at the end, I was like, oh, safari, but which was fabulous. But the other pieces and parts were magic. So I would say find organizations or things that you're passionate about already. If you are really handy and love, working with your hands, check out Habitat International or check in with Habitat Local, and find out or find something that you're kind of passionate about. There are organizations everywhere who invite you to, because what happens, faith ministry, our organization in Mexico does not need us to build the houses. They can build them probably faster without us. But what we're doing is witnessing and supporting so that, our church comes and pays for the house, but we also invest in the house, right?
Yeah.
Paying and investing are not the same thing. So we've invested in that family and that lives, and we'll probably come back the next year and do it again. Right.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of organizations that need an investment, and your time and travel and witness is an investment. So find something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Call me. I'm in the missions department at Myers Park United Methodist. I'm happy to point you in 1,000 directions.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect.
Yep.
Well, I have just been so admiring of these trips that you've taken and your service mindset. I'm just grateful to be able to call you friend, and I appreciate all that you do for our local community and frankly, the world. Britt, you've lived a very, very full life, and You know, the
You're very
story
kind.
continues, and at some point, Hollywood's going to make a movie about you.
Oh, no. Oh, this part. Oh,
And I
Hollywood.
want to know, when they do, who's going to be the actress that's going to play you in your movie?
God, you know who I'd want is the woman who played Wonder Woman. Like,
Oh,
someone, like, strong. I want someone
yeah.
strong and
Gal Gadot.
yes.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
she's also very gorgeous, and so I think I'm a little off there, but, um, it'd have to be someone strong.
You totally have the Gal Gadot. You totally have it.
Well, that would be my dream. Mm,
I love it. What's your movie going to be called?
trip of a lifetime, trips of a lifetime.
Trips of a Lifetime.
Or it's like, I do think the a crooked path might be another
Ooh,
one. We end up where we are, and it's a mystery
I
sometimes,
love it.
but it's good.
And you're Wonder Woman.
Well, no, she's Wonder Woman. She's Wonder Woman. I just wanna be like her when I grow up.
Wonder Woman. I love it. A Crooked Path starring Wonder Woman. Oh, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope that Britt's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or you need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Britt, thank you for being
Thank you,
here.
Scott.